All right,
Okay.
I think I'll turn it over to you to
Okay.
Steve run the
All right.
rest of the-
So the idea is that each speaker gets up to 3 minutes. And unfortunately, there's not going to be time for questions, but there is that post in our Facebook group. It's pinned to the top up in the featured posts area there. That's where you'll find it if you just go to our Facebook group. With that, Darya, you have the floor.
Thank you all so much for your flexibility. I truly appreciate it. Darya Farivar, running to be your next state representative for the 46th Legislative District. And I'm running simply because the 46th District is my home. Was born here. I grew up in Lake City, which is a lower income community of color. My neighborhood and many neighborhoods like mine are the communities that are bearing the brunt of climate catastrophe and environmental degradation. We're the ones that are being negatively impacted by pollution, highway expansion, effects of being zoned along flight paths. Lake City Way, in particular, is an example of how our communities have been impacted by being situated along highways and other health hazards. Spaces like Lake City Way are also a great example of ways in which our infrastructure really contributes to the erasure of non-drivers. Achieving true environmental justice in our communities has to involve the creation of policies that recognize the disparities in how we experience the places we work, live, and play. For many of our community members, public transit isn't an option, it's a way of life. If we want to build strong, resilient communities where all Washingtonians can thrive, we must center the experiences of those who are most impacted by our current systems. Not only is investing in sustainable transportation infrastructure absolutely essential to meeting our community's mobility goals, it's also crucial to meeting our climate change goals. Transportation is the largest source of pollution, that's no surprise, so we need to get as many cars and trucks off the road as possible, which means we need to increase access to mass transit and find ways for companies to also reduce their transportation needs. In the 46, we now have several light rail stations, which are going to connect our community to the rest of the I-5 corridor. And we need to continue to build our efforts to connect our neighborhoods to those different great light rail stations, which has to include pedestrian infrastructure as well. I will push for progressive revenue to fund environmentally friendly transit projects and anti-displacement policy so that all of our communities can get to where they need to go efficiently through mass transit. Additionally, a big focus of mine has been to create sustainable and affordable housing for individuals who need it the most, have been the victims of pollution and environmental degradation, and rely on mass transit every day for their transportation. So I'm interested in solutions that make density possible around mass transit, things like the missing middle housing bill. The reality is that we need density, and what density is going to look like is going to be different neighborhood to neighborhood. We really can't rely on having a one-size-fits-all approach. We know it doesn't work. My experiences ultimately reflect the changing needs of this increasingly diverse neighborhood, district, and our state. I've got the expertise and determination to hit the ground running and take on tough issues. And most importantly, I will bring the voices and lived experience of our most impacted neighbors with me to the legislature. I'm committed to holding corporations and major emitters accountable for their impact on our environment and to work in partnership with our communities like all of you on our climate goals. It would be an absolute honor to have the environmental and climate caucuses support in this work. And I would love to have you all join me in making history as the youngest person to represent the district and the first Middle Eastern woman elected to the state legislature. I hope you will join me in lifting every voice. And I so appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight and to have my time changed. Thank you again for your flexibility. I'll drop my information in the chat for anybody who has questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Darya. And now proceeding with the original agenda, we have Bill Ramos from the 5th LD. Bill, I'm looking for you so I can spotlight you.
I'm here. I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Got you. Okay. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having this forum. Again, my name is Bill Ramos from the 5th Legislative District. And I do officially request endorsement in this from you. So that's clear. And knowing that all my campaigns in the past, I am running for re-election for my 3rd term, have been endorsed by the Washington Conservation voters. In my personal bills that I've run, I've been a lead in carbon sequestration and building that up and bringing that into light and using that as best we can to help in climate change. Also the lead in urban forestry and community forestry, trying to help our particularly our areas that do not have trees, and particularly the ones that are environmental injustice, shall I say, that need better green areas to be take care of their neighborhoods. Also, I have a bill I'm working on now on early life stage of salmon predation, particularly related to light pollution. I've got a pilot project going on Lake Sammamish, working with light pollution, eliminating the light so that we don't have so much predation on salmon, particularly at early ages. And I led the bill on making sure that compostable bags that are compostable are not mixed up with plastic bags, so they're clearly labeled compostable. And so we can do that and separate that from our plastics. On the big bills, I've also supported and worked on also is the Forest Health Bill, helping move into our Department of Natural Resources with a 20-year plan to get our forests more healthy in how we have to take care of them and manage them in a way that keeps them healthy and less susceptible to catastrophic fires. Having worked for the Forest Service for 30 years, I have a little bit of knowledge in that arena. And we're also trying to build up their forest fighting forces so they can do a better job when we do have those fires and get to them. Also been working very hard in the last couple of years on the low carbon fuel standard that we passed, and also the Climate Commitment Act. We took that Climate Commitment Act and put it all into transportation. As mentioned previously, transportation is one of our biggest polluters. I have been leading transportation as a vice chair of Transportation Committee, working in the equity and diversity piece and the environmental and social justice piece. That new package we passed, Move Ahead Washington, is historic in the changes it is bringing to the transportation sector. Every project now has, as I said, a social and environmental justice piece, as well as diversity and equity. We're building jobs, making opportunities for folks that have been didn't have the opportunity to get some of these good family wages jobs. An example in Highway 18, we just broke ground on that piece. Normally, transportation projects do more environmental harm than they do good. That's changing in how we're doing our things in front. This project now is improving salmon habitat, riparian habitat, stream habitat, wildlife crossings, and many other areas of this that are bringing improvements along with transportation. I want to thank you again for all the work you do. Again, Bill Ramos, running for the 5th Legislative District, and thank you for all your work.
Okay, Annie has her hand up. Annie, unfortunately, we don't have time for questions, but if you have something that you'd like to type into the chat, you're welcome to do that.
And I'll put my website there and anybody can call me.
Unless, of course, Annie, you have a point of order or something like that. Okay. Next up is John Zingale from the 18th LD. John, where are you?
If it's alphabetical, I'm usually at the end.
Well, it's the you know how Zoom is. It seems to be random. Speak again, and I'll be able to see your box highlighted.
Sure thing.
Oh, there you are. I got you. Okay. Okay. Please go ahead.
All right. Thank you all for having me on tonight. I speak to you from the lands of the Confederate Tribes of the Grand Ronde and the Cowlitz in Vancouver, Washington, in the heart of Clark County. My name is John Zingale. I am the next candidate from the 18th District, position number 1 for the Washington State House of Representatives. For the last 10 years, I have taught middle school social studies here in Vancouver, Washington at Vancouver iTech Preparatory, a STEM project-based school here in Southwest Washington. Some of the things I focused on within my classroom as we teach social studies are specifically sustainability and climate change and how it impacts not only Washington State and the United States, but also the world. My projects expand out into the community and have been seen even worldwide in over 23 different countries. We are one of the only schools in the country that has an official partnership with the National Park Service, specifically because of my work with Fort Vancouver as we work to protect, preserve the park for prosperity and the community. I also sit on the Mount St. Helens Institute Educational Board and bring my students up there as we study the resilience of the mountain and the environmental impacts that the eruption had on our community in Southwest Washington and also across the state. Some of my other projects that I've taught students about also directly deal with the Dalles Dam and Celilo Falls and the flooding of that. We use information from Lillian Pit, and we talk about the building of the dam and what the indigenous peoples lost, and have our students build museum exhibits and not only try to educate themselves, but the population here in Southwest Washington. I believe I'm a really strong candidate. In fact, my numbers from the primary exceeded the expectations as I've been working with Representative Stonier from the 49th. I'm a very hard worker. In fact, I've been knocking on over 2,200 doors myself, trying to get the word out about my candidacy. I'm supported now by the HDCC, but also by the Washington Conservation and Voters and the Sierra Club. I personally have done lots within my life to try to better or reduce my footprint, buying a Prius way back in 2015 or 2005, going full electric with my own vehicle well over 4 years ago, and trying to educate people about that and, in that shift to less carbon emissions. I want to formally ask for your endorsement in this race and help me be the first Democrat elected to the 18th in almost 30 years. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, John. Once again, my agenda has disappeared. Next up, we have Duncan Camacho from the 18th. Where are you, Duncan?
I'm right over here. I'll keep talking like this.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Duncan Camacho. I'm an ICU nurse. I'm running for state representative, also in the 18th LD position 2. So just for some clarification, I'm not running against Zingale. We are actually kind of running together. So in case anyone was confused by that. I'm a proud member of the Washington State Nurses Association. I'm a delegate on the Southwest Washington Central Labor Council with WSNA. I'm running for state representative, for multiple reasons. I mean, whether it's healthcare is a big background for me. Prior to being a nurse, I was a paramedic. So healthcare is huge, and that's obviously one of the big topics right now in terms of women's rights. But I'm a first-time candidate, so I don't have a legislative track record in terms of environmental policy victories. But I feel like I'm confident when I say I believe my values can be in line with ECC here. I want cleaner water, cleaner air, safer and healthier environment. I think transitioning to renewable energies is very important. There are so many areas of climate to invest in and that needs attention over the next several years. I really just hope to be a part of the many actions towards the state goals. Whether it's transitioning state-owned fleet vehicles to all electric, further building clean energy infrastructure, which should be the foundation of what the state builds upon. For local here in Clark County, one of the projects that is coming up here is the interstate bridge replacement. And comes with that is, as one of the representatives said before, try and get cars off the bridge, whether it's, increased mass transit, light rail, all those things are part of the bridge plan. So those are going to be areas where the legislature is going to be extremely important here in the next session. And with the next session, I'm just going to kind of say that, yes, I'm requesting your endorsement. And I think for some of us that were, kind of looking at the picture from an outside perspective, beginning of the year when I was kind of starting my process here, we were just trying to hold the majority in the state legislature. And now we're getting to the point where we can look at a supermajority. It's a big deal. We can make, very important legislative changes starting January. Like, for Zingale and myself, we are in the process, and we have a goal of flipping the 18th that's been Republican for the last 14 plus years. So it's one big step to making that supermajority happen.
Thank you, Duncan. Next up, we have Lillian Ortiz-Self from the 21st.
Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm really sorry I didn't get my questionnaire in on time. I had a family emergency that took me away from the state of Washington for a little while. My daughter and son-in-law got COVID, and I had to go deal with that and take care of my granddaughter. But thank you for the opportunity to speak to all of you. I too am seeking your endorsement. I proudly have the endorsement of the Sierra Club and the Washington Conservation Voters. And to me, it's a very important issue. To my district, climate change is and protecting our environment is a very important issue. I live in the 21st. I have Munkatil and Edmonds. We are surrounded by our beautiful waters. It's an issue that we hold dear. We fight against, we have issues that we continue to look at, such as protecting orca, stormwater, fish passage, all of those issues that surround our waterways, electrifying our ferries. I have been on the transportation committee, and we fought hard to electrify our fleet, to look at things like multimodal passage, everything from electrifying our vehicles to adding electric structure in the state of Washington. Carpool lanes, all of those are issues that we continue to look at. I have the privilege of having Strawn Peterson as my seatmate, who's a strong advocate, and more importantly, I think we're all strong advocates. I think he's very knowledgeable in the area, and so he's one of the people I go and consult with, as well as Joe Fitzgibbon. And so I feel like I'm surrounded by people that really can help guide me in these issues. I am the first Latina to be elected as the majority caucus chair, and so I sit on leadership, where we get to prioritize which bills get out on the floor. And I'll tell you that we are very committed to continue to improve our environment and protect our environment and continue to shoot for climate change. Everything from, we have the Climate Change Act was something that we fought hard to get passed in that transportation committee, and it took a lot of negotiating, and it took a big fight. But we will continue to do that because I think I can speak for our members. We are very committed to this issue. It is our future. It is my granddaughter's future, and it's something we're very passionate about. So I think you'll find that I have 100% voting record with our environmental protection bills, because it's something I'm passionate about. And I thank you all for the work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just got another note from a candidate who has a time commitment a bit later on. If anybody else has got some concerns about time, our goal here is to do 10 candidates every 35 minutes. If you have got a time commitment coming up at 8:30 or whatever, send me a note and we'll work with you on that, okay? Let me get the next speaker going, and then I'll figure out what we can do here. Next speaker is Julianne Gale from the 35th.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Julianne Gale. I'm running for state senator in the 35th LD. That's all of Mason County and parts of Kitsap and Thurston counties. First of all, thank you so much for already endorsing me. And thank you so much for your work and your recent resolutions, particularly the forestry resolution that was recent. You might wonder why I'm here since I already have your endorsement. That's because this work is that important to me. And rather than spend the time talking about myself or my campaign, I thought I could use the time to talk about what additional things can we do together as people who are committed to climate change mitigation and adaptation, and environmental justice. So participating in advocacy this past legislative session really taught me how much corporate greed and extraction is embedded into state law, and how important it is for us to realign our state laws to reprioritize life instead of greed. And so some of the ways, in addition to the awesome things you all are already doing, that I think could help us get there is making sure that we prioritize rural and small town voices in policymaking. This will help us build consensus across the state and will also improve the efficacy of the things we're trying to do. I'm sure many of you are already aware, but I just want to highlight also that supporting tribal sovereignty is climate and environmental justice. And one of the big things that hasn't really been talked about much yet, but I think is one of the most effective ways that we could get to environmental and climate justice is amending the state constitution to enshrine the rights of nature, give legal standing to our waters, to our soils, to our forests. And this would at least give equal footing of nature and big corporations. And I think that's a great place to start, if it's not necessarily the place to end. I just want to end with something that even the most conservative people in my district agree with, which is that the only way forward is together. I would love to talk with any of you more about these particular ideas. I thank you so much for having me, and I'm going to put my information in the chat for how to get in touch and how to support my campaign. Again, my name is Julianne Gale. I'm running for state senator in the 35th LD, and I'm so, so grateful to have your endorsement, and I'm very proud of it as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Julianne. Patty Kuderer, Senator Kuderer, has an event at 8:30. So what I'd like to do is move her up. We've got Sandy Kaiser next. Julia Reed is on deck. Jeff Manson is on the fence, and let's have Senator Kuderer be in the hole. So Senator Kuderer will speak after Jeff Manson. Okay, Sandy Kaiser, where are you?
Good evening. I'm right here.
Okay, please go ahead.
Enjoying a beautiful sunset here in the 35th district. I'm Sandy Kaiser. I'm running for the second House position in the 35th, following Julianne, who's running for the Senate. For me, as a fourth generation Washingtonian descended from loggers and farmers, conservation has just been such an important issue my entire life. At the age of 19, I got an internship at Friends of the Earth under David Brower, who was one of the founders of the Sierra Club, founders of Friends of the Earth, and finally the Earth Island Institute, 3 amazing national organizations. After that, I became an American diplomat, where I spent 25 years overseas, negotiating treaties to protect endangered species, trying to advance international climate agreements, and connecting nascent environmental movements in developing countries with the big organizations in the States. I came home in 2011, back to my beautiful Western Washington, and took a job with the Department of Natural Resources. I was a senior advisor there, as well as communications director during the terrible wildfire years of 2014, 2015, 2016, when we were really seeing just what climate change was wreaking on our landscape. Since then, I've been involved with the Capital Land Trust, which is a very wonderful, smaller group of folks. We work primarily in South Puget Sound and the Chehalis Basin, and really focus on conservation easements, protecting really valuable resources in our forests and waterways, and entering into partnerships with folks like the Squaxin Island Tribe and Taylor Shellfish, who have also endorsed my campaign. I think we have some amazing opportunities here. I won my primary, and I'm the first Democrat to win a primary in the 35th district for a very long time. This is a rural district ready for change, I believe. If I am elected, I have 3 conservation goals. One is that I really believe we should decouple school funding from timber revenue from state lands. I believe we should reassess the true value of our older state forests. And I'm so excited to see the resolution that you all have passed heading forward to the state committee this weekend. And finally, I really think we must help rural workers with the transition to green energy. That transition is coming, but we need to be careful that we don't do it on the backs of folks who are already earning very little money and just getting by. So I'm very proud to be invited to talk to you tonight. I humbly request your endorsement. I think I have a chance to bring this seat into the blue column, and I would be thrilled to be able to work with ECC in the future as an elected official. Thanks.
Thank you, Julia. Next we have, I'm sorry, that wasn't Julia, that was Sandy. Next we have Julia. I'm sorry, Sandy. Thank you, Sandy, for your comments there. Julia Reed from the 36th is up next.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Steve. And thank you all for having me. I'm really excited to be here. My name is Julia Reed. I am running for the State House of Representatives in the 36th District. I am a lifelong Seattleite, a workforce policy expert, and advocate for youth and racial justice. And I'm a teacher's kid. I grew up in Seattle. My dad was a longtime Seattle public schools teacher, and my mom worked in special education in Edmonds and Shoreline. I'm proud to be endorsed by Sage Leaders, the 501c4 arm of Puget Sound Sage, and to have done work at the local level, trying to address the disproportionate impacts of climate change on our low-income communities and communities of color. But climate change is impacting all of us. I just yesterday went on a tour of the Ship Canal with the Port of Seattle and the maritime industry, and all they wanted to talk about was the impacts of climate change, rising sea levels, changes in water chemistry composition, salmon and fisheries. Already they're seeing damage to Fisherman's Terminal from increased sea levels. We saw a new crane that's putting in a tank to hold sewage that has been overflowing into the lakes and into the Puget Sound because the West Point treatment plant is struggling to keep up with the high water levels that are a cause of this extreme weather that we have now. And so I'm really going to the legislature in order to build a Washington that works for everyone. And that is a Washington that is resilient against climate change. I am particularly focused on issues related to extreme weather, which is sort of the downstream sidecar of climate change. As a policy advisor in the mayor's office, here in the city of Seattle, I helped work on our first policy efforts to address the seasonal impacts of wildfire smoke and to create resilient smoke shelters within the Chinatown ID and Rainier Beach community centers and at the Seattle Center. One of the lessons I learned from that is that there really wasn't guidance from the state about what cities should be doing to address the impacts of climate change that people were starting to feel in their daily lives, which is fine if you're a big city like Seattle and you have a big government staff. But for our smaller towns and cities, even right here in King County, they need support from the state. They need funding from the state. They need the ability to create more resilient infrastructure within the state that addresses climate change. So my priorities, if elected, are creating affordable housing, which I feel, and increasing our housing availability in our state, which will not only address our ongoing homelessness crisis, but also help protect us from living in a place of constant urban sprawl. I really want to protect our urban growth boundaries and ensure that we have beautiful, climate-friendly communities. Working on climate change, ensuring a just transition to that carbon-free future, and building our resilience against the climate change extreme weather impacts. And then truly serving our children by investing in public education and also supporting our workers. I'm the only person in our race with a workforce policy background, and I am committed to helping to create apprenticeships and training programs to build our green energy workers of the future. Last thing I'll note is I was honored to win the primary with 55% of the vote. I won by 40 points in our race. I'm really honored to have the support of the people of the 36, and I hope I will also have your endorsement.
Okay. Next up, we have Jeff Manson, also from 36th, also running for position 1. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thanks, Steve. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jeff Manson, candidate for the open house seat in the 36th. I am a Democratic PCO, a member of the ECC, and former chair of the 36th District Democrats. I am honored to already be endorsed by the ECC. I'm honored to get have an early endorsement from this organization earlier this year in the primary. But I'm here to reintroduce myself and also say thank you for all the important work that all of you are doing. I've been fighting for progressive values since the 4th grade when I co-founded my elementary school's Earth Club after I read a book for kids on the environment. So the environment has been is what got me involved in my community initially, and it's a bug that I still have. I later went to law school at Seattle University, where I did an emphasis in poverty and inequality law, and I later represented people with disabilities in public assistance appeals, and then was appointed as a state administrative law judge, where I now adjudicate those same appeals. Been doing that for 13 years. And in my role, I see every day how state laws and budgets affect people, and I'm tired of underfunded government that prioritizes the wealthy and corporations over working people and the most vulnerable. And although administrative law judges like myself are state employees, for almost 40 years, we were prohibited by law from collective bargaining. So a few years ago, I helped my colleagues and I organized and successfully lobbied the legislature to extend collective bargaining rights to us. And then the couple of weeks before COVID shut everything down, we got 85% of our colleagues to sign union authorization cards. So we got our union, we got a contract, and last year I was elected as president of WFC Local 562. So when I see a problem, I get out of my chair and I work with others to fix it. And now I'm running for the State House to fix bigger problems. 3 main priorities: housing affordability, supporting working families, and then of course, climate change is a big one. We have some low-hanging fruit that we can pass next session, which are bills that failed to pass this last session. We had electric vehicle subsidies, updating the building code to prioritize electricity over natural gas, and then changing the Growth Management Act to require climate effects to be considered in comprehensive planning. So that's 3 easy bills that we can focus on this next session. Besides the Environment and Climate Caucus, I've also been endorsed by the 36th and King County Democrats, the Washington State Labor Council and several labor unions, former 36 Representative Mary Lou Dickerson, and just yesterday, the Children's Campaign Fund. Thank you again for your endorsement. I'm not on the ballot that you got in your email because I'm already endorsed. Thank you again. And thank you again for all of your important work on this issue.
Thank you, Jeff. As previously announced, we're now going to bump Senator Patty Kuderer up. She will speak next, and Chipalo Street is on deck, and Emijah Smith is on the fence. Go ahead, Senator Kuderer.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for moving me up. I really, really appreciate it. I also really, really appreciate your primary endorsement. It means a lot to me to have the support of this caucus. And I don't have to tell you that we are at a critical point in our nation's history with respect to the climate crisis. It's an existential threat to the entire planet. I have a son who's an environmental consultant, and he reminds me of this on a daily basis. And, you know, the previous speaker was talking about the need for legislative action, and I could not agree more. We need to have environmental champions who are willing to put forward bold climate policy that will really move the needle where we need it to be moved. And I think what you have seen in the last several sessions in the legislature is that kind of leadership. As we have seen extreme weather events become more common, you have seen an urgency in the state legislature to step up and address changes. In particular, I want to note that we passed the Climate Commitment Act. That was a Reuben Carlisle bill in 2021 that is going to go a long way, I think, in reducing our greenhouse gas emissions. We also passed Senator Saldana's HEAL Act, which deals with the discriminatory impacts of environmental degradation and hazards. And that was a recommendation from the Environmental Justice Task Force. And I was really proud to have supported both of those bills. We've looked at greenhouse gas emissions coming from buildings and from fluorinated gases, and we passed those bills. And we also looked at reducing the carbon intensity of transportation fuel. And this last year, we passed the greenest transportation package in our state's history with the Move Washington Forward Act. And I'm really, really proud to have supported that bill as well. But I know, and I want to say this too about the legislation that we have passed. I know that it's not the end, it's the beginning. It's also really put us in an excellent position with the Inflation Reduction Act that was just passed by Congress. We are going to receive a lot of funding from that bill, at least that's what we're expecting, given that we've already set up the infrastructure in order to receive it and to move forward with the renewable energy technology that we have established in the state. So while we've made significant progress in addressing climate change, we recognize that we have far more work to do. I'd like you to look at me as a resource for that. I know I don't sit on those committees, but I'm very much interested in this area. And I do want to have a planet that's healthy for all of us. And, the bottom line is that we have to ensure that our environmental issues, and especially when it comes to climate disruption, is addressed in our policies. That has to be the lens through which we look at our policies. And so,
Kuderer.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, back on track here, we have Chipalo Street from the 37th.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chipalo Street. I'm running for the second House position in the 37th LD, which covers South Seattle. I'm a leader that will fight to solve our housing crisis and work tirelessly to stand up for our most underserved communities. As a key part of this, environmental justice is something that affects BIPOC communities because we often endure the brunt of pollution. The 37th is one of the most diverse districts in the country, and we face the general hazards of climate change that threaten our species and specific issues like air and noise pollution from the planes that fly over Beacon Hill and the proximity of our district to highways. I believe that all kids deserve a quality education regardless of where they live. My parents had to camp out overnight to get me into the best public schools, and that led me to a career in technology. I want every child to have the opportunities that I had from my education, so I worked to close the digital divide by volunteer teaching computer science at a school in South Seattle. The science community was dismissed when we started ringing the alarm bells about global warming decades ago. We really need to elect more scientists like myself who will use evidence to create sound policy. This is why 314 Action Fund has endorsed my candidacy. I was glad to see the HEAL Act pass, as environmental justice has been given lip service for far too long. We need to continue this work on the implementation, data collection, analysis of the data, and then take action on the issues revealed by the data. I'm also a proponent of using alternatives to single occupancy vehicles. Before the pandemic, I had a goal of biking to work 2 days a week. I live in the Central District and I work on the East Side. That 30-mile commute forced me to deal with a patchwork of dangerous streets mixed with great bike lanes and trails. I'll use this experience to improve our infrastructural alternatives to single occupancy vehicles like mass transit, bikes, and foot transit. This is particularly important for the 37th District because we have two of Seattle's most dangerous roads in Rainier Ave and MLK Way. We need to find ways to make these streets and other streets safer for pedestrians. People on foot account for nearly 40% of fatalities, although they're involved in fewer than 5% of the collisions. And this is especially important for protecting our youth, as there are 10 schools within a few blocks of these dangerous streets. We also need to transition to clean energy yesterday. This is an area where we can partner with our labor community, as building out our infrastructure will provide good union jobs in both rural and urban areas. I'm a former union member. I stood with that union during a work stoppage, and I'll support other working people as they advocate for better compensation, benefits, and working conditions. I humbly ask for your endorsement. You'll join 41% of the voters who delivered my candidacy a primary victory, the stranger, state reps Vandana Slaughter and Javier Valdez, Port Commissioners Hamdi Mohammed and Sam Cho, the Urbanist, Transportation for Washington, 314 Action Fund, and other electeds, labor, and community leaders. I look forward to working with you guys to move us towards a greener future. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Chipalo. Next up, we have Emijah Smith. And where's Emijah?
I'm right here.
Sorry, it's Emijah. Just to
I knew you. I hoped you would correct my pronunciation. I apologize. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hello and happy day. My name is Emijah Smith. I am a mother, a grandmother, and daughter of the 37th Legislative District. I've lived my life here in the district. I'm serving the district. I'm having over 10 years of experience, demonstrated advocacy on the legislative level in Olympia as well as in my local community. I am proud of the work that I've done hand in hand with community in the 37th Legislative District to lift up good policy, change laws, and advocate for equitable solutions. And I'm running to represent my community in the 37th District in order to continue and expand this work. And I am formally asking for your endorsement. That would be an honor to have your endorsement today. I'm blessed to have lived, again, most of my life in the district, so I have felt the change. I have felt the gentrification and the disinvestment. And I know our communities are brilliant enough to change it and I have the relationships and the skills and proven leadership to make those changes occur. I have had meaningful wins already in our legislative district, from community development, bringing in finances from the Washington State Finance Commission for community development of low-income housing in the Central District, South Seattle, and Rainier Beach, all in the 37th. Receiving community building funds through our marijuana revenue from the government's budget to make sure that organizations can apply to do the good work that they've already been doing to correct the harms that were created from our failed war on drugs. Climate change and toxic pollutions and poor land using planning is impacts on low-income communities and communities of color. I live in the area near MLK in South Seattle. Me and my children born with asthma, I understand the real ramifications of poor air quality and poor soil and the pollutions on Beacon Hill. I've worked 11 years in healthcare, working with youth and families dealing with chronic disease as a result of, I believe, of those injustices that are part of these systems from environmental factors. They not only lead to poor health, learning disabilities, unsafe living conditions, and a loss of wealth. So for me, my life's work of moving policies guided by anti-racism and anti-Blackness is my biggest accomplishment on environment and climate change. I believe any climate change agenda must be preceded and continued by the work on health and education equity, affordable housing, food security, and justice reform, because they're all connected. I'm currently organizing with my neighbors and community partners on Beacon Hill, advocating for protections of trees and protecting the wetlands. My neighbors and I are canvassing currently our neighborhood because there's a new market rate unit coming into the community that's going to advance gentrification and displacement. But it also is going to remove trees and habitats for the birds and our wildlife. So protecting these trees and wetlands, excuse me?
Thank you. You're just over 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you very much. I just want to say that I'm endorsed by Rebecca Saldana as a sole endorsement of 37, who is a leader on our HEAL Act. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Emijah.
Thank you.
Next, we have Julio Cortes, and followed by Jessica Wadhams. Julio, go ahead.
Great. Hey, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much. Julio Cortes. I'm running for state representative for the 38th Legislative District, position 1. I'm honored to already have the endorsement and really appreciate the continued support. We had a really strong primary. We had really good numbers come in, better than expected. So the general's looking really good, and I look forward to working with all of you here today. At a local level, I've been a big advocate here at the city of Everett. I work for the communications and economic development departments. In the economic development side of my position, I've been supportive of our departments, including our Everett Transit department in electrifying our fleet. We've gotten 9 buses in the last couple of years and are looking forward to receiving 9 more in the next years coming through. We've also led efforts to bring electric scooters to the city. For our city size, that they've been a great accomplishment for us. We've been able to get folks out of cars, into buses, and then into scooters for that last mile ride. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done with scooters. There's still a lot of work that we need to do as a city to make sure that we're supporting our environment. I'm also part of the placemaking team at the city of Everett, so working to protect our green spaces, making sure that they're equitably available to all of our residents is something that's really, really important to me as well. I'm definitely committed to keeping corporations accountable for the effects that they're having on our environment. And not only that, but I'm looking forward to attracting the green tech sector to our region. For the city of Everett specifically, we've had a lot of success in the last couple of years to attracting companies that not only have their communities in mind, but also their environments in mind, including InFarm, which does vertical farming upwards instead of spreading out. So we've seen a lot of success in that realm too, and I want to see how I can support us as a state to bring more of the green tech sector and make it kind of a mecca for the green tech sector here in our regions. I'm definitely not an expert on everything, and that's kind of where you come in. I want to make sure that I'm available to all of you, that you're available to me, and that we work together. I really truly look forward to being an environment and climate champion for all of you, and I'm ready to get to work here when we get down to Olympia. So again, I appreciate the endorsement, and I look forward to working with all of you here moving forward. So I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Julio. I appreciate the time too. You were way under. Next up is Jessica Wadhams from the 39th.
Hello, thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Jessica Wadhams. I am running for state rep in the 39th LD, position 2. I'm actually the only Democrat running in my legislative district, a fact that I am proud of, but hope that we can see change as the years go on. I have a history in activism and community organizing, and it's actually what kind of started me on this path of wanting to run for office and see that real sustainable changes can be made. The 39th district lines changed, just like most everybody else's did, and with that, we are now seeing a change in our population and our diversity. And it's really important that our representation is aware of that and it's reflected in the decisions that are being made. Climate justice is a big piece to me. It goes hand in hand with, serving the marginalized communities that are out there. And in the 39th, we are growing in diversity. And so it's important that we have people in place right now, like myself, who want to make sure that that's a priority in the conversations and decisions that we're making. I'm also heavily endorsed by labor and union, and it's very important to me that we have leadership in place looking to bridge those relationships and creating partnership in those conversations. We want to make sure that, yes, we are addressing environmental concerns, but that we're doing it in a way that we can ensure that people have jobs and can seamlessly work together. I'm not an environmental expert, but my values are in line with the ECC as well as some other places that I have been endorsed by, such as Sierra Club, Conservation Voters. It's important to me that my children, which I have 2 of them, have a future as well as everybody else's. And right now, that future is concerning Ingram. And so we need leadership in places to be championing those concerns. Concerns like water, wildlife, forest protection. Those are all things in my district right now that are up for grabs if our representation does not get improved. Currently, the representation in the 39th does not put any sort of environmental or climate initiatives as a priority, and I want to seek to change that. Bills like 1099, where we're restructuring plans to be better reflective of the climate issues in the way that we develop and grow. We need people who are going to be supportive of that, and I am one of those people who am in support of that. My other focuses are protecting reproductive rights, promoting good jobs with livable wages that also create a clean economy, and ending the crisis of homelessness in our state, which is a massive issue. It needs major addressing right now. I have excellent relationships with several of our currently elected leaders, and I want to continue to work with them in partnership so that the voices of my communities are being best served. I'm really looking from anyone here to give me any insight or perception that they can share with me so that I can be better informed, and then also better messaging that out to the community members who might be a bit on the fence about environmental initiatives, and hopefully help get them along. So we were super strong in the primary. I was at 39%. This is an absolutely winnable district, and I appreciate the support and endorsement of the ECC. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica. Next up, we have Tana Senn, followed by Lelach Rave. Tana, where are you? Uh-oh. Is Tana Senn here? Maybe you're muted? Okay, let's move on. Tana, if you're here, send me a note, please. Let's move on to Lelach Rave. Go ahead, Lelach, where are you?
Hi, can you hear me now?
Got you.
All right, so it's Lillian Rave. Hi, everyone. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, that's quite all right. You are not the first or the last
Sure
to
I'm
have
not.
difficulty with that. So completely reasonable.
Go ahead.
Sure. So my name is Lillian Rave. I am running for the open state House seat in the 46th Legislative District. And by training, I am a pediatrician. We have actually never had a pediatrician in our state legislature, and it's been 10 years since we've had a physician of any sort. And I will tell you that when I look at climate, I see it in a very real, upfront way in front of me in the office. Every year during wildfire season, I see a spike in asthmatics coming into the clinic struggling to breathe. Last summer, when we had our heat wave, we put many patients in the hospital for dehydration and heat-related illnesses. It is not theoretical for me. The climate crisis and the intersection between climate and health is real. The climate crisis is one of the most urgent matters that we have to face as a community and as a society. And Washington has made tremendous progress in this arena compared to many other states. We've passed the Climate Commitment Act, the Clean Fuel Standards, many of the things that you all have heard about so far tonight. However, we are so far behind that it just is not enough. The next place that I would like to see us focus is in our built environment. We need to get fossil fuels out of our homes and offices. We need to build to higher standards, and we need to retrofit older buildings. One bill that I would fight for that did not pass this past session is a bill to allow local municipalities to be stricter than the state building codes. I have no idea why we would hamper progress in parts of the state that are willing to go farther and faster toward making the changes that we need. We need to support heat pumps and other sustainable cooling systems. We need to incentivize the adoption of cleaner cars and electric vehicles. And we need to see clean energy sources as the source of jobs that carry us into the future. So going back to the asthmatics that I see in my office every time when we have wildfire season, that ties us in also to the equity piece. We know the data shows that children who are of minority, Black, brown, people of color are much more likely to be asthmatic. There are lots of potential reasons for that, but often it is from living in what we call fence line communities. Those are communities that are literally on the other side of the fence from big polluters. So we need to always be using an equity lens to take a look at how we address these issues of climate. And finally, I really do want to be a science voice. We have many people of many different backgrounds in Olympia. I don't know how many we have who can read a scientific journal competently. So I would very much like to, with my election, be on the climate committee so that I can perhaps translate some of that science into normal person speak, and we can use data and evidence to help us create the best policies possible. climate it goes through everything. We absolutely must change the way we relate to our environment, because honestly, all the rest of it does not matter if we do not have a planet on which to live.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is Tana Senn in the house yet? Okay, let's move on to Ted Cummings. And if Tana doesn't appear, then following Ted will be Frank Chopp. Go ahead, Ted.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. I'm Ted Cummings. I'm running in the 4th LD for State Representative, Position 1. I'm so impressed with listening to all the candidates tonight, and my take on all this is going to be a little different. I'm a steel worker. I work in heavy industry, which probably isn't real popular with groups like this. But I sit on several boards that deal with transitioning to clean energy. I'm endorsed by the Washington State Labor Council and the Spokane Regional Labor Council, and I think that's great. But what I'm really focused on in this election is what's going on in our country. And I live in a really red district, and I have representatives that don't care about climate. They don't care about much of anything. Social justice doesn't even enter their mind. And my big fear is that issues like climate, social justice, housing, infrastructure, all the things that are so important are going to be overshadowed if we lose our democracy. And that's why I'm in this race. I'm represented by people that don't even believe in basic science. They're vaccine deniers. They are questioning the integrity of elections, and it's transitioned to just the surreal when we have people that are threatening our law enforcement, when we have people that are subverting our government and supporting coups. If we don't elect, in my opinion, Democrats, we're going to lose our opportunity to work on anything. I guarantee you that if we don't win this election, and I mean sane people that use science and education, and they are able to gerrymander and manipulate our elections and subvert our government, none of our issues are going to go anywhere. Environmental regulation will go away. Social justice will go away. And that's what my campaign's all about. I know that kind of sounds like the sky is falling, but I don't think so. I think it's really real. And that's my spiel on my campaign, is that we have to pay attention. We have to elect people that are, going to respect the process so that we can deal with environmental issues. We can deal with housing and infrastructure and all the things that we know we have to do. But first things first, we have to elect Democrats and make sure that our democracy is safe. I appreciate your time tonight and listening to my story. And I look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. Next, we have Frank Chopp. Frank, where are you?
I'm right here.
Oh, there you are, right there in the middle. Okay.
All right. Well, thanks.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much for your time and consideration. I very much appreciate your endorsement. I feel very close to this whole effort. By the way, I appreciate what Ted just said. Running for the legislature in the 4th district is not easy. Plus, I like his mustache, just as a side note there. I think he's a courageous person to run in the 4th district. In the 43rd district, I've been fortunate to work with a number of you in terms of, I set up 2 years ago what I call the climate crew, which involves a lot of local Democrats. And Jeff Berner is one of the ones that participated in that, by the way. I see him on the list here. And also Arvia Morris was a key leader in that effort. I don't see her tonight, but real close to Arvia, and really appreciate all of her advocacy on climate issues for years. So I'm very proud of our record as House Democrats. So I believe very strongly that the House Democratic Caucus in Washington State is the most progressive caucus in the entire nation, going back several years on many, many issues. In terms of climate and environmental issues, 2 things in particular I want to highlight. I led the way working with Gale Tarleton and others folks like Joe Fitzgibbon and Beth Dolia to pass the 100% clean electricity bill back in 2019. That was a key thing to move forward, and we passed it actually 3 years ago. So I was very proud about that, in part because it involved electricity, and my dad was an electrician at IBEW for 55 years, defending the rights of working people, but also looking broader about the benefits for the community. So we worked closely in what I call the Green Power Blue Collar Coalition to pass that 100% clean electricity bill, one of the first in the nation to do that. I also worked with Joe Fitzgibbon closely on passing the clean fuel standard. We passed that in the House in 2019. Finally, we were able to get the votes in the Senate later on. And so we were very, very proud of that. Those are just two examples of the things that we've done. Looking forward, I would love to keep working with you closely, maybe to have the next iteration of the climate crew. If any of you want to join that group, just give me a call. By the way, my cell phone is 206-612-7071. I'm very transparent. I actually put my cell phone in the voters pamphlet. But hey, it's good for good government and doing good things. Looking ahead, though, I think there's some key issues on environmental issues, climate issues that we have to pay attention to. The first one is actually implementation. We can pass all sorts of bills that sound good, but unless they're implemented, they don't create what we want. And for example, the effort for electric cars, I strongly supported my seatmate, Nicole Macri, to pass that bill or that policy. And so we were very proud about that. But now we have to implement it. And that's not easy because you need charging stations and all the rest. The other one, which was much more controversial and I'm very concerned about, is the cap and trade bill. And am I running out of time?
I'm afraid you have.
Okay. Well, anyway, I just want to keep working with you on these key things. There's other issues in terms of transferring development. We just opened up a housing project right above the Sound Transit Light Rail Station in Roosevelt neighborhood called Cedar Crossing. It's beautiful. You talk about transferring development. It's great for transit, great for housing, great for poor people in the whole community. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Frank. Next, we have Emijah, you had your hand up for a moment. We don't have time for questions, unfortunately, but if you'd like to put something in the chat, that would be great. Next, we have Doug White. Doug is running for Congress in the 4th CD, which is just south of where I am here in Ellensburg, but I'm in the 8th. Doug, welcome. Go ahead.
Well, thank you for having me. I really do appreciate that. One little correction. Congressional District 4 isn't south of you. Congressional District 4 is to the east of you. We go from the Oregon border to the Canadian border. Yeah, we are the largest district in the state, geographically wise. Anyway, my name is Doug White. I am the Democratic candidate for the 4th Congressional District. That is Central Washington. And it's quite an honor to be able to come here and formally request an endorsement from the ECC. So thank you for that. My background, I'm a 4th-generation farming family, born and raised here. My father, he was a union pipe fitter. He retired from Hanford. My background's a little bit different. I was a global project manager. I implemented large-scale multinational technology solutions for really big companies. And I learned a lot, some important things. One of the things I did is how to tackle really big problems. I learned to work with people of very different backgrounds, very different agendas. It was always my responsibility to be able to find that common ground to bring people together and deliver that project on time and, of course, under budget. Now, what made me decide to run is kind of simple. I looked around and I saw that the problems we have today are the same ones that my grandpa used to tell me about 50 years ago. You know, we had water, immigration, infrastructure, and he called it weather, but now it's climate change. And so I asked myself, why is it that 50 years on, just for me, none of our representatives have ever tackled these issues that are so critical to us here in this district? And I couldn't come up with an answer. And then I looked at our current representative, and he's a climate denier, and he is actively doing things to hurt us in Central Washington. I mean, he sponsored a bill to slow down our transition from fossil fuels to carbon-free energy production. He voted no on the infrastructure bill, the inflation reduction bill, and he has not advocated for any money to be able to come into the state in order to be able to address issues such as land management, to work on our, slow down our wildfires or anything else. In addition to that, he hasn't provided any supports. As I traveled up and down this district, I realized that the Methow Valley was the only community in all of Central Washington that came up with a climate action plan. Now, that's terrible because we need a climate action plan for all of Central Washington, all of Washington State. Methow Valley, by having that climate action plan in place, allowed them to be able to pull down grant dollars early when the money started flowing in. Other districts that I talked to didn't even know anything about it. They were so left out in the cold. And that's unacceptable. So the things that I am doing is playing on the skills that I have, and I'm starting a new dialogue with people in this district, because I'm finding that where most of them are conservative, we have a very conservative district, and some of them are climate deniers to some degree. None of them deny the fact that it's having a significant negative economic impact on them and us. And this is a way to talk to people. And I'll highlight that. I was down in Goldendale about a week ago, and I was talking to a woman about a number of different things.
You have like 5 seconds.
Good. And she said she's a climate denier, but she also said we need to do something about the weather because it's really hurting the farmers. So there's always common ground. That's my focus. So thank you for giving me the time. I do appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Doug. Next up, we have 2 Daves and a Patricia. We have Dave Paul from the 10th LD is up next, followed by David Hackney from the 11th, and finally, Patricia Weber from the 32nd. Go ahead, Dave. Not hearing Dave. Are you muted, Dave? Okay, why don't we move on to David Hackney, and we'll see what happens with Dave Paul. Go ahead, David Hackney.
Good evening. My name is David Hackney, and I represent the 11th Legislative District in South King County, Tukwila, Renton, and Kent. My district is nestled between the Port of Tacoma and the Port of Seattle. We are immediately adjacent to SeaTac Field. I have Boeing Field in my district, and we are intersected by 3 major highways, I-5, 405, and 167, leading to the worst air quality in the state. The University of Washington reports that South King County adults have a shorter lifespan than adults in other parts of the county. They report that children in South King County have higher instances of respiratory disease. As a result, after my first term in office, was first elected in 2020, my legislative mission statement is about lowering the energy burden for low-income communities. It's about reducing the air pollution in South King County, and it's about mitigating both the source and impact of climate change. Towards that end, I was vice chair of the Capital Budget Committee and on the Transportation Committee, and I focused on clean technology and green energy. I successfully prime-sponsored a bill giving homeowners in common interest communities like homeowners associations and condominium associations the right to have electric vehicle charging stations on their property. And I was the lead on budget provisos on capital budget, investing $47 million in low-income weatherization. The best way to save an energy molecule is to not use it in the first place. So that is my legislative focus. In the future, I am working on decarbonizing the ports, including both the drayage trucks and ships. I am working on hydrogen as a way of energy production and for peak. And this has been my focus. I am a Legislative Horizon Institute fellow with the Department of Energy and Pacific National Northwest Lab. And this is my focus. And I'm out of time?
Yeah, you are, but you could finish that sentence.
Okay. And that's been my focus, and it will continue to be, and I would be honored to be endorsed by your organization. I think we have similar values. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Next up, we have Patricia Weber from the 32nd. Where is Patricia? There she is. Okay, be sure to unmute yourself and please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, everyone, for your endurance. Thank you for having me here. I am Dr. Patricia Weber, running as the sole endorsed candidate for state senator in the 32nd District. I have been a lifelong proponent for the environment. For example, way back when in high school, before recycling was even a strong concept, I convinced my mother to reuse all her aluminum foil and tried to convince the neighbors as well. As a physician, I am well aware of how a sick environment affects the health of the population, and particularly those people that are disadvantaged and of low income. And don't forget the animal population as well. As has been said, I believe that we need more people in the legislature with a science background that can address these things in a scientific manner. I take climate change very seriously, and I worry that we are not addressing it with the full urgency that has been recommended. I totally support maintaining our forest land and the biodiversity within. Actually, biodiversity everywhere in the aquatic areas as well. I have worked with local groups to try to convince our city council to maintain our tree canopy, especially during upzoning conversations that the council has had. In my place of employment, which is a state facility, there is a new plan for a building. That plan includes clear cutting one of the large urban forests on that land. So I have taken a position, an advocacy position, to save those trees, to plan with more consciousness and to plan more responsibly in this building. Again, in the community, I'm trying to support as much of the natural environment as is possible. I have signed the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge. My campaign is people powered the natural way. I want us to stop the burning of fossil fuel as quickly as possible. Part of that urgency has led me to make a misstatement on my questionnaire. So I realized that I misspoke on the 8-year plan. So stopping the burning of fossil fuels, even if it makes us uncomfortable currently, I believe we need that. We need the discomfort to urge us on to better innovation. I would be very honored to have your endorsement. And I'm so impressed by this slate of candidates. I would be thrilled to work with each and every one of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia. That brings us to the bottom of our list, the end of our list. We had 2 candidates who weren't here when I looked for them. I don't think I've seen them come in. Is Dave Paul here? And is Tana Senn here? Okay, great. Well, that concludes the candidate presentation portion of our meeting. That was really fun. Thank you to all the candidates for requesting our endorsement and for taking the time to be here. Most of you have stayed here for the entire meeting. We really appreciate that. And I think we've all had the experience of how much fun it is to listen to candidates who are passionate about the environment, talk about the environment. So next on our agenda, and by the way, someone said something about our endurance. This is nothing for us. We have long meetings sometimes. Next up on our agenda, it is 10 minutes to 9. Duncan Camacho raised your hand briefly. You could say something if you would like. Go ahead.
No, I was trying to do the clap on with everybody else, the icon, and then when I tried to lower it down, I hit raise hand. So my apologies.
No problem. We've been clapped. We got it. So it's about 10 minutes to 9. I put on the agenda this item 6, possible legislative priorities discussion. In the past, ECC has sort of communicated our legislative priorities through resolution. And perhaps that's how we'll continue to do it. But I thought I would open the floor up for a couple of minutes to see if anybody has any comments to make about possible legislative priorities that ECC could focus on. Go ahead, Lale.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have heard so many people say a lot of positive things about developing transit-oriented development, and lowering emissions from transportation sector. But I haven't heard one single word about rail. Actually, that word, rail, I haven't heard it. We have passed several resolutions supporting regional and conventional intercity passenger rail. And so my hope, and I'll make it brief now, is that in this coming legislative session, we will urge the legislature to pass a budget that funds projects that are in the wings, that are in the waiting, just waiting to be developed, that will improve and expand the Amtrak Cascades. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lael. And if you look in the chat, about 3 minutes ago, the word rail did finally appear. So
I did see that. Thank you. Yay. Thank you.
Okay, Lila, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I would like to propose that the ECC prioritize Senate Bill 5244 that's in committee, supporting the development of SMRs in the state. And I can talk more about it if you want, but I just would like to throw that out there and put it up for discussion.
You might make sure everyone understands what an SMR is.
Oh, small modular reactor. So that usually means 300 megawatts or smaller. And this is new generation technology. So it is the safest of the safe technology. And it is a bill that is basically, it starts to level the playing field with the subsidies of renewables and fossil fuels. It doesn't bring it to parity, but it is a bill that allows for a tax deferment of 5 years, and that goes back into a fund, which is actually for, maybe Paula, you can help me. I don't have this all in front of me. For, I think it's, or Carl, education and training back to the state. So it's not a tax break, it's a deferment. So to help promote the development within the state. And it would be an excellent solution to the problem of the Snake River, the lower Snake River dams. And actually the coal plant closing. And there's many other things that it would handle, including the increased need for electricity as we electrify the state.
Thank you, Lila. Angie, don't forget to unmute.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to make sure or spread the word to our candidates and elected officials that are seeking or have received ECC's endorsement to please acknowledge the resolutions that we have put forward to you. And we will be sending even more to you in the near future, hopefully before this session. And really consider that we are endorsing you because we hope that you will put bills forward, fight for them, that are all of the things that are priorities to us. And of a big concern for me personally is making sure that we protect the Growth Management Act. It's not perfect, but it is a thoughtful planning process so that we can protect all of the things that you've been talking about tonight that are your priorities. And then the big concern is affordable housing. I hear a lot about it, but there's been a lot of bills that have alluded to affordable housing, but it did nothing to secure that they would remain affordable or that they wouldn't just take away any protective regulations or local control that allows us to have tree retention and open space and all of that stuff. And please don't minimize our NEPA or EIS processes and the public process and having a voice and being able to have challenges in court, but for the people and the good of the whole. Thanks so much.
Okay. Martin, or maybe it's Becky, go ahead.
Yes, this is Becky. I would like us to consider whether there are items coming up related to protecting our forests and green spaces, which actually make a huge difference to our climate change efforts if they are protected. And we did have a candidate tonight talk about decoupling school funding from our cutting and clear cutting of our forests. I think this is something that it's highly likely a majority of our members could get behind and strongly support.
Very well. Thank you. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I think the Inflation Reduction Act is such a game changer that everything we go forward with is just going to have to be reevaluated considering, what's in that bill. And I'd hope that maybe that's something we should focus on in the next few months is to try and get ourselves educated on that. One of the things which was funded on that was actually increased funding to all the organizations that can do the NEPA analysis. And that's actually one of the big reasons why some of these projects don't get moving forward is that they're actually underfunded at the federal level to do really good, do the work that they're required to do. So that's one area that I think, potentially can address some of these problems we've had with the NEPA in the past. The other thing I wanted to highlight is I think that the EVs are going to be a big issue in terms of how we move forward. I think the road tax, road usage tax, which is going to be replacing, has to be used to replace the gas tax, is going to come up. We need to stay on top of that. We need to look at equity for EV ownership and continue to monitor, some of the work that's being done on the state legislature in terms of mapping where they're going to put the new EVs. Or the EV, infrastructure, because we really can't afford to have a situation where we are right now, where only wealthy people can take advantage of the new technology. It really needs to get down through all parts of society, and that's not just only the lower income people. It's also middle class people. It's working class people who they need to have access to this because the benefits to EVs are just so large. In addition to the benefits to the climate. So a couple of different things, but like I said, the Inflation Reduction Act is a big deal. We really need to understand that. There's a lot for SMRs in the IRA too, and that's something that we need to look at.
Okay. Jeff, there aren't any more hands, and while we have your attention, I hope you feel better now. Great job. This went really well. Thanks again for all your work. You and Martin and Brad. Okay. It's maybe everybody's looking at the time and thinking, okay, maybe we can be done now, and maybe we can be done now. Let's. Those were some good comments. Oh, Martin and Becky, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have a concern here, and you can just cut me off if you think we don't want to go there. But we heard from at least a couple of candidates tonight who explicitly said that they were requesting our endorsement, but for a variety of reasons, and I'm not sure what they all are, we did not get questionnaires from them by our deadline. And I am wondering if you would entertain a motion that might allow us to allow those two candidates to be on our endorsement ballot, or is that just somewhere we don't want to go?
Is this something I could do by fiat?
I think that it would require some kind of motion to suspend our rules with respect to the deadline for submitting endorsement questionnaires. So, and again, with Jeff's indulgence as well, I would like to move that we suspend our rules with respect to the candidates who addressed us tonight, but who have not submitted endorsement questionnaires, so that if they submit their questionnaires within the next 48 hours, that we will add them to our endorsement ballot.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, very good. Angie, does your hand have to do with this specific thing, or can it wait?
Yes. I would just like to know, this is worrisome for me because I've been a candidate, state level candidate twice, and I very much want to be able to endorse everybody that will support what we're doing. But if you have a deadline, you have a deadline. And so there may have been candidates who would have liked to have participated in this, but they felt they missed the deadline. So was the availability to speak in tonight's meeting available to every candidate and or incumbent that was interested in our endorsement, or only to those who had submitted a time? I guess there were people here tonight, and what were the rules on that? So we know this is fair.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, so we'll take that as the first bit of the debate about the motion to suspend the rules. Does anybody else have anything to say about this? Okay, Martin, how shall we go about voting here?
I unfortunately am not prepared for people to fill out a form online. I didn't get quite that far tonight.
Okay.
It would require a 2/3 vote of our members who are present to pass, and so I would say that for it to pass, it needs to have overwhelming support.
Okay, well, let's just sort of be on the honor system about the member thing. And if you go down to the reactions thing, you can choose a green check mark or a red X. Let's just have everybody vote and we'll see what it looks like. It is 7-6 in favor, if I just counted correctly. So the motion does not pass. Okay. Thank you for that. You can undo your red X green thing there. And we're on to the good of the order part of the agenda. Anybody have anything for the good of the order? All right, then. I think we're on to the adjournment part of the agenda. Thank you, everyone. This was fun, and we really appreciate it. And candidates, good luck in the election, and we're really looking forward to working with you. And if you're not successful, come and work with us, okay? Thank you, everyone. Good night.